You're listening to Enhancing Human Experience, episode 69. Today we're in for a real treat. Michelle Harris returns to the podcast to share some awesome tools for being your own life architect and creating your life your way. Really awesome stuff that she digs deep into her tool chest. These are typically tools she only shares with her paid coaching clients, and she shares them with us. So get your pen and paper ready because you're going to love all the stuff that she shares. Now, just to remind you about Michelle, she was on the podcast a few episodes ago and was gracious enough to do another podcast to dig deeper into the tools that she uses with her coaching clients and in her own life. Now, just to refresh your memory about Michelle and her coaching business, she is an IPEC certified coach. IPEC is the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. She's also a Ziglar Legacy Coach. Of course, Zig Ziglar was a huge motivational and sales trainer and speaker, and Michelle actually met Zig, which she talked about in her prior interview. I'll link it to that in the show notes of this interview. But she met Zig, learned all about his positivity and the mental mindset and his coaching program in this Ziglar Legacy program. And if that wasn't enough, she's also a John C. Maxwell coach. And John C. Maxwell is, of course, the leadership coach. We all are familiar with his books and his impact on success and the tools that he's given us. So she's also certified as a speaker and coach in the John C. Maxwell program. That's quite a bit, isn't it? I mean, come on, it's huge. So obviously, I was really excited to hear Michelle share some of her tools that she uses and dig deep into her bag of awesome tools to share them with us. So you're really in for a real treat today. Sit back and enjoy the episode. Okay, well, Michelle, our last interview was super successful. I want to just let you know while I have you here, before I introduce you, is that it was highly downloaded. People loved it on the website, and it was really, I think it went over well. And I appreciate you for joining me again to do kind of a deeper dive into some of the tools that you use that kind of bubbled up after our last interview. So welcome to the podcast again. I look forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me back. I'm excited to be here today and with you and your listeners.
Great. I'm so excited to do like this deeper dive because that's one thing that I kind of felt too in some podcasts. They're all unique, right? Interviews are all unique, and some kind of stay at a high level, some dive deeper. And I'm really glad that you are willing to come back and dive a little bit deeper to some of the tools, because what you shared before was super awesome. And I know that's going to be valuable to people about some of the tools that you use in your day-to-day life and also with your clients. So yes, start us off here today. What are you going to kind of dive deeper into on this level? What can you share with us?
I want to just go deeper into some of the things we talked on the first interview, recapping on. I really, pride myself in this whole life coaching about, coming alongside them and being a life architect. And we talked a little bit about it. And I want to talk a little bit more about that today, about people's foundation and how they're building their lives and what my foundation was like and what tools do we have to actually create the life that we really want to live. And I think, I want to talk about operating systems, how we show up and how do we shift our operating systems, because that has a lot to do with, who we are, what we decide to do with our life and how we do it. And, before I was, had these tools myself, I was showing up in life, but I was showing up with some things that we had touched on. I'm going to talk about it again today, a little bit of that catabolic and anabolic energy in our life. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about some things that keep us stuck. There's 4 energy blocks are the biggest things that keep us stuck from stepping into what we really want to be.
Okay, great. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so let's just talk a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about my journey and how it can help other people with these tools.
Great.
Talking about being a life architect, when I was in real estate and I was helping people build their homes, their dream homes, and create and design their homes that they were going to live in. it was amazing, right? When you learn about construction, I mean, I was a sales rep and a sales manager and a salesperson, and I came alongside with these people. But also, what I did was, I got to learn the trade about building a home.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing about a home is you've got to have a solid foundation. And just to correlate, when I spent my career in real estate doing that, it was fun and it was exciting. But what was missing is, how are we building foundations of our life? We can build a beautiful house, but we're what's going to make it a home. Mm-hmm. So before I had the tools of coaching, some of these tools, I was living my life, the foundation of me, my core. So I call that foundation our core of who we are. Mm-hmm. So we're not taught these things in school, but we grow up and we become what everyone told us we were, how we were raised, what society tells us, what our church tells us, what the newspaper tells us, the news. That's consciousness. It's basically we're being with all this stuff, our environment, our neighborhood, everything that's being infilled in us, we become it. So we are what we are told we are. So then we grow up, and I had this operating system of who I was where I came from, what I'd been through. So it's what I decided to do, and how would I do it? Well, inside me, I had some brokenness. I was raised by an alcoholic and a workaholic. So I picked up some things. I had some tough challenges in my childhood. I went through some major adversities. And those, as we grow, you learn how to just kind of stuff those things and get on with life. But however, when we stuff those things, they show up in our life, Mark. Mm-hmm. Like when I showed up to build my foundation, life is happening. Guess what? Those things that happened to me or didn't happen to me, I was carrying. So how I show up in work, how I show up in relationships, if I was abused or if I was insecure or if I had that catabolic energy, which was I'm a victim or I'm in this internal conflict, that's going to be how I show up to present myself in life. And we kind of, that law of attraction, we attract that.
Right.
So,
well, I just want, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to ask you a few questions about this, because I think what you're talking about is super valuable and foundational. And it seems to me, I see this too, is that, the program gets in, like you said, and it gets into the foundational level, even when we're not aware, from a little kid, right? Programming that gets in. And that's one of the things that fascinates me as well. And that it's like, how do we get in front of that as a society and a culture to short circuit that? Because, parents are, I believe, they're doing what they know how to do, showing up in the way they know how to. Their subconscious programs are running as well, right?
Right.
So my fascination is like, how do we get in front of that with kids and like break that cycle of this programming that runs for years and years? And for me, my programming I started to become aware of negative, or I shouldn't say negative, but unproductive or unbeneficial programming about when I was 40-ish. Mm-hmm. My question is, how do we get a bit ahead of that as a younger person? I know we can probably touch on that, but right. I think what you're touching on is fascinating, this foundation.
Right. Well, see, what's so amazing is what you're saying, right? So I had my big, I was getting through life. Life was working is what I thought, right? When I hit my 40, that's when it all just came kind of like, wow, I can do this different. But when you're talking about like childhood things, right? We all carry that. And so when we realize, wow, this doesn't define. Like when I realized, oh my gosh, my operating system, I just thought this was who I was, because it's just kind of our makeup, right? From things we're not even aware of. And I have, tremendous, amazing parents, even though I was raised that way. They are amazing people as I grew to change and they grew to change. But there were some things that happened in my life that because I developed that operating system, I didn't play full out. Mm-hmm. And there's so much potential that we all have. So I had a belief system that I wanted to be, I had all this inside me. I wanted to do what everybody else was doing or what I thought I was called to do. But guess what? Because of that catabolic energy that I was allowing, that victim state of me, that operating system that I had that belief that was my set system. I couldn't change it. I couldn't play full out. I couldn't
Yeah.
step into my fullest potential. I couldn't step into my dream, my insecurities, my fears. I allowed all that, the family I came from, that was defining me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Do you think you would have arrived to that realization had you not gathered these coaching tools on the way?
I believe that I was always on the journey because I have a strong faith. Like I said, I've learned so much through that. But at the same time, these tools were so revolutionary for me. Like it was like a revelation. It was aha moments. It was how it was brought to me. So I do believe that, I don't know if I mean, I was on that journey, but this
Sure.
really made it so clear for me. It made it so clear. That's why I'm just so passionate about what coaching can do to resurrect not only people to step in, to have a solid foundation of who they truly are opposed to who they were taught they were.
Right.
But it can resurrect any part of your life, your spirituality. It can resurrect any part of your life. That's why I believe in all these coaching tools, because for me, the tools even empowered and resurrected my faith to even be strong. When things aren't even going our way, our faith wavers, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it can be tough to still believe and have hope, whatever that belief is for you, if it's the universe or your creator. The point is, how do we stay in hope and stay in that perseverance?
Right. Well, and one thing that I find fascinating, again, around what you're talking about here in this topic is that, like you said, I do believe that regardless of whether we get the tools or not, or these like consciousness tools or like belief tools,
Yes.
there is this underlying current that is so strong in the human condition and human experience that it's going to always bubble up. It may take a whole lifetime,
Yes.
or it may take 20 lifetimes. See, and that's what I find really fascinating is how do we get more of that into our lives? Whereas in school, we learn, literature and math and things. And I'm not saying those aren't valuable, but it's like we never talk about the spiritual side and the undercurrent of really what we are, which is the most powerful aspect of us and the most beneficial. And it's kind of like, come on, we've got to get both of these feet planted firmly on the ground, the spiritual side and the intellectual side. And it doesn't seem happening
Well,
yet. I mean, are you, at least I'm not seeing that as much. I mean, slowly it's happening, but at least in the educational system, it's just not there.
It's not. Well, they're taking everything away. Think about it. Like we're trying to run everything, it's like a car without gas, right? I mean, we're trying to make it work. And, pretty soon we're out there shoving and pushing a car and then we've got everyone helping us because we can't get this car to move without gas. It's the same thing, right? They're taking that part away and we're focused on success. Well, first of all, we've got to identify what success is. And, money's great. All of these things are wonderful, but we can't become our full capacity in any of that without being plugged into spirituality, where we get our fuel.
Yeah, we are totally disconnected. You're right. And the other kind of travesty is we make kids, we put them through an educational system, which is totally based on the intellect and like race mind or mortal mind knowledge. And then we say, okay, now decide what you want to be for the rest of your life. And by the way, we've never taught you how to tune into your intuition. We've never taught you your spiritual higher self. Now go for it.
Yes.
No wonder we all wake up at different points going, oh my gosh, I've been on a path that isn't fully integrated with who I am, right? It's not
right. And yeah, it's not fair. And what's amazing, I'm going to just go back 1 second. I was talking about how I was raised with my parents. What's amazing about my parents, here's right what you just said. When my parents put their spirituality on the back burner of their life, and then they got caught up in life and their tragedies and their adversities and just whatever they were going through in their life, well, guess what happened? Then the kids kind of suffer through that, right? But when my parents put back spirituality first in their life, it was amazing how all of our relationships resurrected.
How old were you when they started to go more spiritual or bring it back?
Well, my dad got sober by the time I was 14. So, and he was, and it wasn't abuse. He was like a functional alcoholic. He was an engineer, amazing man. But my parents had lost my sister. She was killed in a car accident. And so she was hit on her bike. So, but that, I think, with all of that, that happening to my parents, they just started living in fear, in fear based, and let's just protect everybody. When you protect everybody, you distant everybody from you.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha.
Do
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying? They had, they were starting to build their Fort Knox, which they probably already had from their operating system from children. But then now, oh my gosh, we've lost one. They've got three more. Let's just, keep them all arm's distance, then they can't hurt me because I already lost one.
Oh, so you're saying there was more of rather than bringing you closer as children, they kind of distance away to maybe protect painful situations from themselves. Is that what you're trying to?
Yeah. And I see that now more than everything. And that was like, that was years and years ago, but my parents and I over the years since I've been 21 and I'm 48, we have an amazing close relationship because we connect spiritually more than ever. And that's transformed their life to live more faith-based instead of fear-based.
Well, and that's a good point that you bring up. Our parents are kind of on the same path as we are, just maybe a little bit further down the road. And it is interesting to see how their awakening happens too, and their understanding of life happens. Because we always, in a very real sense, so kind of our parents are the same as when we were younger. I mean, that relationship, but really there's change there too, isn't there?
Yes. And, what's the beauty about forgiveness too is, when I realized just what you said too, hey, our parents were they're just two kids that got together and they have this operating system, right? When you can see those eyes and you look at your parents and forgiveness comes, that they honestly they're doing the best that they know how to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, the healing can begin. There's a lot of families, right? I try not to use the word dysfunction, right? I do functional to optional because we're all dysfunctional. Sure. But that's the point, right? It's like, how do we get more healing and how do we get more restoration and reconciliation in our lives? Forgiveness is everything. If we are angry at anything, just go give more to it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, forgiveness will heal so much, if not everything.
Yeah. But it doesn't always mean every single person. Like some people don't want to forgive because they're afraid that they have to reconcile. Well, there are certain relationships in life that we forgive. That doesn't mean we need to reconcile.
Yeah. That's a good point.
That's a whole nother, it's another topic on forgiveness, but it's teaching that too, because a lot of people are harboring stuff inside them, right? That catabolic energy, the blame thing, or it's true, they were a victim of something. I'm not diminishing that, but they harbor the unforgiveness because they think, oh, then I've got to go, you might have to go hang out with the person that did that to me. No, you don't. I mean, it's beautiful when you can have restoration and resurrection. Forgiveness, two different things. Forgiveness is letting you off the hook, letting the person that hurt you, when you forgive them, you let yourself off the hook so you can move on from that. You're not carrying that energy. When we were just to go back real quick about what, who, and how we do that operating system like a computer, right? So for instance, here's the difference in me. When I was walking so much with the catabolic energy, I was a victim of life. I felt like I was more victim. So I carried this energy. I'm going to explain to you the difference so you can just get an idea. So if you started to tell me a story, something so amazing that happened to you today or this past week, you would just start telling me, right? Mm-hmm. Now, here's an example. If you right now, Mark, to take both of your hands and just stuff them in the side of your rib cage, like on your right or left side, just press them as hard as you can into your rib cage right now while we're talking.
Okay, yes, I'm doing it.
Now you're going to start telling me the same story. Do you see that there would be a difference?
Well, I feel more closed off and I feel restricted in a sense. Is that?
And distracted.
And distracted, yes. Mm-hmm.
So what happens when we don't realize that we're carrying this energy around, that when we show up in our life, we're not fully present. We're not fully showing up, playing fully out. We're not truly who we are. We're not aligned yet because we're letting that energy distract us. Gotcha.
Give me an example of the counter posture of that, if we can, equate it to the body. So if you're pushing your hands into your rib cage, distracting yourself, what would be the body structure of open and receptive?
Right. So just take your hands out, and I'm going to ask you the same thing, right? That just went away. So now you can come present and really tell me your story.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So not just in our stories, right, but in how we show up in our relationships, how we show up in work, how you and I are talking right now, right? We could have distractions going on right now. Like if you had to keep your hands on the side of your rib the whole time we were talking,
Mm-hmm.
you would be getting through this interview just like I would be if I did. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of like being, we're like, you and I are people are dedicated in our own growth and our own growth to help change lives. So we want to be present and remove our distractions.
Yeah, I love that, and that touches on something I was going to mention is that like you said, it's up to all of us to either break that cycle of victimhood or break that cycle
Mm-hmm.
of the unconscious program that's been passed down through generations. Again, not blaming those past generations, just
Right.
waking up to our own power to say, hey, I'm going in a different way. I'm going to put new information and new ideas into the program and go in a different direction and do it, make a conscious choice as opposed to just adopting whatever we've been given.
Right. And so that's how this operating system shifts, right? If we build a foundation of a house, can you imagine when we're building the foundation of our life, we're creating and designing our life, where are we doing it from? Are we doing it from a lot of catabolic energy with that hands on the side of our ribs and we're distracted and we're building our life? Or can you imagine creating the life that you've dreamed of without that distraction?
Yeah, then it becomes the sky's the limit, right?
Yeah, we are not limiting ourselves, right? It's
Right.
like and then it's you can step in and you can. I love to use the word roar because for me it's a positive word. Like I roar through life
Yeah,
now
I love
because
it.
you know what I mean. Because you can be excited about even if the outcome's not exactly what you wanted.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find metaphorically that you have to tear your foundation out and just totally get rid of everything, or can you make some modifications and or leave some of it intact? I mean, how do you conceptualize that process of getting rid of the old and putting the new in and starting over?
Well, like this, because we are human and we are not 100% perfect, any of us, we are going to have some catabolic energy. We're going to have, but the difference is do we reside in it? Is it a part of who our being is? Or now have we shifted out? We've taken responsibility of this old operating system. We're designing a new one. Now that's a part of who I am, but it's not running my life anymore. There's a big difference. So guess what? So throughout the day, when we're riding those waves, because that's what we do, our core thoughts go up and down. For me in my coaching program, I have that 7 levels of leadership, right? So I'm level 1 and 2 are catabolic, and then we shift out from 3 to 7.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout the day, we ride the wave, just like, whatever triggers us. Like the day could have, my day started out amazing because I was on my routine, but then boom, the computer didn't work the way I wanted. And my son was sick from school, the different things that happen, and boom, I could get, that could trigger, conflict, anger, it's not working out. Right. But now when you're intentional and you're conscious, you just take a deep breath and go, guess what? We're going to plow through this. This is just part of it. This is what showed up today. But what happens when we don't know those tools? We don't reach our fullest potential. We stay in fear.
Yeah.
We crash. We hide.
Mm-hmm.
We're insecure.
Yeah.
We hide behind things.
Yeah, exactly. And then we just go and hide in our little cave, right? I mean,
right.
And I think some of that happens when we once we do it once or get through a challenge once, and then again, it builds up a resiliency and we get more confidence. But again, going back to, teaching it to younger children, if it hasn't been taught until say you're 20 or 30, you got a ramping up period of time, don't you?
Yes, which is powerful. And I'll tell you 2 things. Like looking at my parents now, I'm going to go to that real quick and I'm going to go back to the kids. Looking at my parents now, because I've shifted so much, I look at my parents as amazing heroes.
Yeah.
What they've done for their lives, for myself, for their family. Now, if I was still in my victim and conflict, wow. I mean, my mom and dad are my heroes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your perception would be entirely different, wouldn't it?
Yes, and they are in true forgiveness, and I love them, and they're my best friends, and I respect and honor them. Children, let's go back now. You're talking. So now I've been given the gift of these tools, and I'm still learning, and I'm on the journey as well. But I have a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, sometimes they just don't want to really hear their life coach mother talking to them.
Sure, that's a double whammy right there, right?
It's a double. but we're all called, right, to become. We all have a calling, and we all have a purpose, and I am so passionate about that. So when my children are going through a hard time, I paint pictures for them too.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're called to soar, there are going to be things that distract.
Sure.
Things are going to come against us. Kids saying mean things about us. That happens to us as adults. Bullying's going to happen. People don't want. There's a lot of mean people out there. We have to believe the truth. The reality is there is good and evil.
Yep.
I'm sorry. We all have. I think I heard it yesterday on another podcast. We all have two wolves.
Yes.
Feed the good
Absolutely.
one. You know what I mean? So I do my best to pour into my kids the same when they're challenged, especially with a teenager coming home with all that's going on with that. And I sit her down with my chart, my 7 levels leadership, and ask her how she wants to lead her life. And I call the leader out of her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And do you want to buy in? Where does integrity and character? What's your operating system? I try to work with her now with those tools. But I have found that I can draw that picture of, for any of us, and this might be a little bit silly, but this is something that helped her. Mm-hmm. When you're called to soar, you're soaring up, up, up. And I used it with the crows because this is all I could come up with when she was having a really hard time and she was being bullied really seriously. Mm-hmm. And it's a serious subject because a lot of kids are committing suicide over this.
I know, it's horrible.
But so I said, listen, you have a purpose and you're starting to excel. Well, people really come around you. If you're in victim mode, people love that because that kind of energy likes it. But the minute you start to soar out of it, they're going to start pecking at you. I use an example of like crows. I said the crows are pulling at you. They're picking up the crumbs. They're doing whatever they can do, and then to pull you down. Eagles soar. Mm-hmm. So I said you got to keep soaring, and every time you get triggered, just picture it as another crow coming at you. Mm-hmm. And I know that's kind of silly, but I related that to children to help them say, we want to pour in and edify kids too, and we're here to serve and not be served. But at the same time, that's where that good and evil comes around. That negative energy, there's always coming against us. There's always going to be that opposition.
No, I think the way you painted that is great because that's a very real thing is that, if you're up high on a plateau and you're, like you say, you're soaring or you're at the top of your game and you're living your purpose in full expression. Yeah. There are some people, not everyone, but some want to cut you down and bring you back down. And it's great that we can see that, because one of the things I think about is, if you're able to kind of mitigate that and do your thing while also managing that negative energy in a positive way, so to speak. So it's not like, blaming the people that are trying to tear you down or something, but as that's what's tasked to highly successful people is, right. They've got to play both ends of the spectrum, right? Their own growth and also be highly forgiving and loving and managing that negativity that's coming at them. It's a double whammy, but successful people are up for it, up for that challenge.
Yeah, this is what's going on. I mean, there's people out there that have been, I'll just use this. I can throw this in for a second. They've been hurt in churches. Mm-hmm. I'm one of those people where there's a lot of judgment that comes from a lot of people from different organizations or just life in general. But I speak so transparently because I want to help other people, that those are other things that when we're judged, mm-hmm. And if you know your course, like what you're saying, when you're soaring, those people want to keep you down, but that's where that forgiveness, like what you're saying, is so powerful. But when you're successful and you know where you're going and you know who you are, it doesn't take away how bad things do hurt, because pain is real. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to allow that, but it doesn't hold us back. We don't buy into that lie. It wants to keep us so stuck. And that's where, when we forgive people, like these things that we're talking about, forgiveness, and just move on, because those are more life lessons for us. We don't have to let that keep us down.
Right. And also one of the other things that I've seen, I specifically see this, yogis talk about this. They actually some of the high end ones will actually ask for difficult experiences, right, in life, as crazy as that sounds, right? Because unfortunately, that's the only thing that makes us, difficulty makes us stronger, right? And that mm-hmm. resistance. And so it's counterintuitive to the way I've lived my first part of my life. I kind of describe myself as like a comfortaholic, right? And just build this cocoon and but you realize that that's part of was my own awakening at this, around 40-ish, late 30s, early 40s. Hey,
Right.
you can't have a better life living in the comfort zone, right? It just doesn't happen. Those two things don't mix well. And so you have to step outside of your comfort zone. And that's one of my lessons that I'm learning is, hey, if you want more, you got to be more. You've got to be more valuable and step into your greatness, right? And it's scary, but
Yes.
it's the other way,
Yes. Well, something just on what you said, I was just at a leadership conference a couple weeks ago, and that's one of the guy that runs it. He says, comfort is the most addictive drug in our country.
It is totally. It's totally.
And so powerful, right?
Yeah.
But then what too is if we can think, I found this when I was in my victim state for me, poor me, everything's going wrong. Why me? And then the anger and the unforgiveness, all these little things that were rooting up inside me. I noticed then I actually had all those same people, like, it's okay. They loved that. You know what I mean? They love to comfort you and yeah. But I noticed when I shift out and said, I no longer want to live like that. I'm not living like that. And I started to soar above all of that. Those people didn't really want to be around me anymore. Matter of fact, they wanted to pull me down, and those crows were coming at me. And I've experienced that in churches. I've experienced that in all different realms. So that's where, when you were talking about the yogis, it's kind of a gift, because what I realized was, wow, I don't want to judge them, but what I want to learn through this is that's not how I want to be. That's not where I'm going.
Right. And like you say, you've got your own mission that you now know. And It's like, there's no crow that can peck you hard enough to make you pull off your path now, because you're so valuable, right? I'm assuming.
Right. And yeah. Oh yeah. And I've been, beat up, kicked,
Sure.
It's not easy. Life is not easy. I've cried. I've had people say stories. I've been in car accidents. I've been given this antibiotic that's almost taken my health. I look at it all like, okay, you know what? It's not going to get me down. I have a purpose. I'm getting up.
Yeah.
There's a time, there is a quiet time, right? Right. Sometimes these things happen where we need to be still.
Yeah.
But being still is different than being defeated.
Totally right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I love that, because taking a rest and a breather to kind of catch your breath is different than giving up and stopping, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I could have been, I went through some really hard time when I got divorced, and kind of had a falling out in our church because of our divorce and everything. And I was really wounded. I mean, I couldn't believe the pain that I was going through. I thought, wow. I mean, if I didn't have my faith, my mission, and my belief in these coaching tools, I could have been one of those people that went home and committed suicide.
I know. It's interesting you mentioned that. We are all, hearing about this Kate Spade in the news, and someone who's super successful, highly, very wealthy, living what appears to be an extraordinary life. We don't ever know what's going on inside of them, but we all can relate, because we're all human beings, and we've had those moments when either we are at the brink of doing something harmful to ourselves or someone else in order to get to feel good, right?
Yes.
And it's like by the grace of God that doesn't happen to us,
right.
But it's we're all right there at some point in time, aren't we?
We are, and that's why it's so important to know that joy and happiness are different.
I like that.
Yeah. So, happiness, we can attain this happiness, it comes and goes, but joy is a constant, and that's no matter the outcome. So joy is something in us that's always in process. And so when we can find that, because, like you and I are talking, hey, we can say it, life isn't easy.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you still can have your joy.
Right. As this undercurrent that's always with you.
It's always with you. So there's freedom in that, right? That's to me, yes, I want all those monetary things, and, I have all those goals too, and vision boards, but my true success is that joy, because
I love that.
That's the freedom. It's right here.
Yeah.
Where you're sitting, and where I'm sitting, between our heart and our mind, that freedom. That's my passion, to help people have that come alongside, because then they can step into who they are.
Wow. And it's funny you say that, because as, same thing, my vision boards, my goals, the more and more, and especially I get a lot of this from Abraham Hicks and her whole message,
Yes.
One of the things that I've started shifting my perspective and saying, okay, well, Mark, you know what you want, physical things, experiences, etc., as opposed to going for them, maybe go for the joy and just build up the joy, and then those things come as a byproduct, as opposed to this. Human beings are so funny, aren't we? We're like fish, we're like a goldfish. We see a shiny object and we like go for it, and it pushes it farther away, right? And we're like, I want it.
Right.
The more we want it, the more it retreats from us, and then we just get frustrated, right? And then do something silly or stupid.
Right. And you see, there's the difference between sustainable and none, right? Because this is where people get tired. They're chasing after something.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's exhausting. But when you first can be, then you can do and have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is the thing that our society doesn't really. It's kind of counterintuitive, and it's like, okay, go for the thing. And meanwhile, like you said, there's no foundation of being. The houses are built on this shifty, very tenuous foundation that is like boards and rocks and little pebbles and things picked up along the way, like a birdhouse, right? It's not solid, right. And then no wonder we crash so many times.
Right. I mean, just look around. How many people grow up? They do what they're told to do. They grow up, they go to school, they graduate high school, they go to college, they get married, they have 2.5 kids, a dog, a white picket fence, and their life. And then they wake up like you and I do, and are almost 40. And I'm almost 50 now, but my awakening time was when I turned 40. So in most people, it's about 40. Wake up and go, this is it? I mean, what?
Right. Well,
oh my God, I went to this Ivy League school. I had this great job. I've got this wife and 2 kids. I don't even like any of them, and I don't like myself either.
Right. And I'm being someone, I'm suppressing my true person, right? That's totally true. Totally.
It's so true, because they haven't done the work. How many people, it doesn't matter what your education is, your 401k is, what you have or what you don't. How many people truly are pouring into themselves and self-improvement, doing this kind of work? We'll spend $5,000 on a vacation. Oh, we're there.
Totally.
You know what I mean? But how many people are pulling over, you know what I'm saying, and paying $5,000 to sit in an office with somebody like me, or on your podcast with you, or everyone? Do you know what I'm saying? It's 85% of people aren't doing, but the 15% that are, those are the ones that have the foundational, sustainable success.
Right. It's so funny you mentioned this, and this kind of ties into one of the things we're talking about is, this notion that we perceive other people as we are, and we think that, oh, well, if I know this, then everyone else knows it.
Right.
Well, for years, before I launched the podcast and before I started building this business and the books around personal development and personal transformation, I did this in the closet. I would read my personal development books, and I would do all these little retreats and things and stuff like that. And so I just assumed everyone else was doing that too, until finally I had this realization, well, maybe they aren't doing this, and then you kind of start sharing. I shared my passion with the world, but it's this, we see the world the way we think, with the way we are, as opposed to what it really is, which is dangerous to a degree.
Right. Yeah. Well, everything's self-perception, right?
Yeah.
But where are we coming from? Like, when I do my 7 levels are the energetic self-perception. So if we wake up and go, wow, I'm looking at the world from all my victim and conflict eyes, right?
No wonder I'm having these experiences, right?
Right. And no wonder we have so much evil, really, too, at the same time, But at the same time, when we look at the eyes from, wow, forgiveness, non-judgment, reconciliation, peace, compassion, forgiveness, take responsibility, cooperate, acceptance, service, wisdom.
We start seeing it all, right?
You start going, wow, okay, I'm only going to pit stop there. Today I'm in my conflict, or today I'm in my victim mode. But see, now I'm intentional and conscious, right? So now I'll go, wow, I'm playing the victim right now. How long am I going to sit here with my Ben and Jerry's?
Right, totally, right, yeah.
Because I'm conscious, right? But we got to get the word out and help people get conscious of what they're doing. Because if they would change their core, their energy, their foundation of who they are, because they can do it themselves. They need people like us to come alongside them, champion them, to help them give the tools. Guess what happens? They shift that. They change their life. That's how the world gets changed. That's how their families get changed. That's how their community gets changed.
Right. It all starts with each of us, and that's the responsibility we all have, isn't it?
It's so true. And we're sitting there pointing our finger, yelling at everybody else.
Well, that's how it's so much easier to change the world, to change everyone else, and for our own good feeling and happiness, isn't it? And we don't have to do any of the hard work, right? We don't have to dig up the skeletons and, or tear down the foundation.
Right. And it's hard to do it, but it's the best work ever. I'll say it over and over. This is the hardest work I'll ever do, but the most freedom's in it, the best work, and you soar. You begin to soar. No, life isn't a box of chocolates. I have really hard times. I'm going through them right now. I'm in some really hard times right now in my life. But to have the joy and the perseverance and know that this is something I'm going through. It doesn't necessarily mean it's happening to me. I'm going through something. And it's such it's like a backpack of tools instead of a backpack of baggage.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's a whole different way of living life.
Well, and I hope people listen to what you just said, because also talking about the few moments back when you're saying, hey, once you connect with that joy, no matter what life throws at you, joy is always going to buoy you up, right? Instead of life pulling you down, because there's nothing stronger, in my opinion, than the joy that we all have. It can fight anything. It can take care of it. But see, since people have kind of disconnected themselves with their source of joy or that true nature of them, I think they don't have anything to fall back on, and they're like duking it out, and they feel like they're taking on the whole world, and they're just a puny, limited human being. And no wonder people cave and people collapse and give up. I mean, I wouldn't blame them. Like I said, I've been there myself, like you said.
Right.
But once you have that joy and connection, it's like any struggle pales in comparison. Yeah, it's still challenging, but you've got the whole universe at your back, and it's like, okay, well, I can get through it.
Right. And we're not taught that we're letting our days own us instead of us own the day, right? If we don't get up, I mean, it's so important. I get up and have my routine in the morning, and that's so important to me to start my day that way. You learn habits, you learn discipline. It all starts there. You have to have these habits and discipline, and it's hard, and we touched on it last time a little bit, just about to what we read, to what we write, to what we listen to what we eat.
Yeah, it all goes in, doesn't it?
It just all goes in, and it's like, in the consequences of what are we allowing? If we're trying to go uphill and we have a vision and a goal and we want to create the life that we dream, we have to be aware of what are our downhill habits that are keeping us downhill. And that could be easy as a cookie.
Yeah.
And that cookie is so hard to give up. I'm not saying it's as easy as a cookie, but discipline is, self-discipline. Put down the cookie.
Yeah, if it doesn't contribute to your goal, right? It's a non-issue. Why have it?
Right. So one of my key exercises for me every day. Does this add value to me, or no, I don't take it. Okay, will I add value to this? Yes or no, then I do it. Because my life is spent, I want to add value to you. If I'm not adding value, that's what's important. And if I'm going to take something in, it should be adding value to my life. Yeah,
I love that. And it comes down to that simple question, right? It's a simple yes or no. There's no gray area, is there?
That's right. And I think these are things that we're not taught with these tools. I want to talk about something called, I have one of these tools I call it the Gales.
Okay.
And the first one, the Gale, is kind of our inner critic, right? We have this voice inside us, and I call it the gremlin.
Okay, I love
and so do you love it? Yeah. It's the inner critic. It's, I'm not good enough. Oh. So we have this voice inside us that goes, I'm not good enough, so I can't do that. I could never go do that. I'm not good enough. That inner critic.
We are, and this is huge. So I can't wait to hear it.
It's so big because we all have it, right? We want that, but then we could get right there and go, oh no, I don't have the skill set for that. Or, oh no, I don't have the right part. I don't have the right, not right family, not right money, not right car, not education. I don't speak well. I don't look right. Whatever it is. I was too abused. I can't do that. All those things. I come from the dysfunction, all of it. So there's that inner critic saying not good enough. So I try to help people, for me, if you can actually picture that, it helps to get rid of it. Realize it's a part of who you are. We all have it, but it doesn't have to run and dictate our life. Right. But we're not taught this, right? So I kind of make a little silly thing of this, but it was huge for me when I had the revelation of this one voice on one shoulder saying, you can't do that. You're not good enough. Nah, you can't do it. You know what I mean? And this other voice going, I want to go for it. And the other one saying no. Well, I don't know if any of your audience or you're familiar with all the Shrek movies. I am, because I have children. But there is a character on the Shrek movies called Mr. Rumpelstiltskin. And he's this little tiny guy with this fiery red hair, and he's the one that comes in to steal Shrek's
Oh,
life.
is he the negative voice, the personification of the okay?
Yes. Yeah. And he comes in and he's like, nah, 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 and he lies and he tells Shrek to sign this contract and he'll have the life of his dreams. But what he does is he steals Shrek's life.
Oh, okay, bad guy.
Bad guy, right? So I had this moment of like, wow, okay, so if we could actually say, it sounds silly, but when I actually said, wow, I'm going to get me a Mr. Rumpelstiltskin, so I did, and I had him for years. I don't.
But
He must be tucked away
like a little
somewhere.
doll, like a little toy to remind you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I ordered him. Yeah. And every time fear would pop up, and I don't have them out anymore, but this was years ago, but it really was a great tool for a while because it was like every time fear popped up and said that I couldn't do it, I looked at him and said, you are a liar.
Yeah, that's a great tool. I love it.
Isn't it great? I go, you are a liar and you come to steal, kill, and destroy.
Yeah. So again, so talking about that specific tool and your realization of that, did you hit a point when it was like the light bulb came on, or was it a slow gradual? Did the Shrek movie turn the light bulb on, or did you already know this?
No, it was funny because when I was learning this tool myself, this is years ago, we're talking,
Sure.
I don't know, 8 years ago, 7 years ago. But when I first learned this tool, I came up with what would be my gremlin. Like it was a great tool. That's why I try to help my clients too. Can you name your make something of your gremlin? Is it a puppet? I don't know, whatever it could be. It sounds silly, but because some people make this perfection as their inner critic. You know what I mean? Like everything has to be perfect. And, so I just came up with when I don't know, I had this aha moment of this Mr. Rumpelstiltskin because he was a liar, he was manipulating, he wasn't telling the truth. And that's our inner critic. We are good enough. We are all good enough.
Yeah. Oh, I think sometimes that realization comes up, like you mentioned, of the inner critic when we have set a goal and our higher self knows that, hey, I'm going to help you get to know your inner critic because you got to get through your inner critic to get the goal. It's like it's like a helping hand that we get, but we've got to be faced with that. That's such a great idea to put a name and a visual thing to it.
Yeah, I found that powerful. Like, and it became so powerful for me that now I don't have to have that actual visual, right? Because now it's part of who I am. But I'll probably dig him out now that you and I are talking about it.
Well, like you said, once you slay the dragon, you don't need to go and slay it every day, maybe just every couple of weeks or months or whatever, right?
Yes, when it kind of wants to rear its ugly head and take over. But so that's something that, is something, just something to be thinking about, right? People, just to become aware of that what's holding us back. That inner critic, it's true, it's there, but it's not true that it's supposed to run our life. You have power over it.
Right. And I heard something the other day where, again, if we don't ever stretch or reach for something more, the inner critic doesn't have to come to work that day or that month or that year, right? Because there's nothing for them to hold back. It's only when we're setting that new goal. And I know this is like in my life, when I was just kind of on autopilot, living in the comfort bubble, there was never, the inner critic was kind of silent, right? I mean, he's taking a big vacation.
Yes.
But as soon as you set a goal, then they're like, oh, I got to punch in and start getting to work on this guy, right?
Right. And it's so true, Another one.
So I think.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I think some people haven't met their inner critic like you were fortunate to meet your inner critic. Whereas if you haven't met them, then that's even, you still got to bring them to the awareness, don't you?
Right. Yeah. And it's a powerful tool, right? And once you become aware of it and you know it and you can bring it and put a name on it, wow, guess what? You just took the power from it. You took your power back.
Totally.
Assumptions is another one, right? A lot of people have these assumptions. I was another person that had the same thing. Wow, well, that I can't do that because, it happened in my past and that's just the way it turns out for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the assumptions created your reality, right?
Yes, right. So I think that a lot of people will stay stuck because they won't try something again because they had a bad experience.
Right, and they assume they just can't do it. Why bother?
Right. Yeah. So it happened.
How did you get past or find out how to work with your assumptions and tweak them?
Well, I just tweaked them with this. It's like, okay, it happened in my past and that's real and that's true. But how true is it that it has to happen in my future again?
Yeah.
And if you think about that, like how true does it really have to happen? Like I bought into that it did. But then when I realized, well, how true is it really that it does? No, it doesn't.
Like, well, once you take control of the wheel, then you know it doesn't have to, probably, right?
That's right.
Mm.
And and then in situations like there's interpretations. Another thing, interpretations get people stuck too, because when one thing goes wrong, they have an interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we have these interpretations that can keep us stuck too. Instead of saying how you shift out of that is, well, what's another way to look at it?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like when something happens and people get, they get stuck or they get caught up in, thrown in the towel because something happened.
Mm-hmm.
And they take one interpretation of it, that's it, and they stay locked in that one view.
Yeah, they can't get a broader perspective, can they?
No. And if you show people the tool on how to do that,
yeah, and then they're like, oh, I can keep going. It's just a small little blip, right?
Right.
Wow.
Which is isn't that powerful too? I mean, that's
because
there's so
how many people have been shut down because of, like you said, one little bad seed in the consciousness or bad thing that closes the whole operation down, right? And then close the doors. Meanwhile, they were just a moment away from a big breakthrough or a moment away from a success that would have, sustained them.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And these are the energy blocks, I mean, these are your inner critic. These are the 4 energy blocks. Your inner critic, that gremlin that I called. Your assumptions keep you stuck in your past so you can't move forward. Interpretations, only looking at something one way. There is another way. And if you can't think of it, what would somebody outside of it, what would be their interpretation? Get people to help stretch your thinking. Limited beliefs, limited beliefs. How do your beliefs hinder or help you?
Yeah. Speaking of beliefs, how do you, I guess, remodel or demolish and build up beliefs? Do you have a tool or a process that you work with either on your own or with your clients? Because obviously beliefs are huge, that you maybe do daily, or that you write down, like, past beliefs that didn't get me where I want to be and current beliefs that I need to override those. What kind of tool do you use, if any, on beliefs?
Well, like on beliefs, when I first start working for some, it's all unfolding people's belief systems, even understanding what they are, because most people don't even know what they are. But for me, I had, mine are so different now, right? Because I had all these false belief systems that I believed. I had, but now I wear a new set of sunglasses. Totally. But they were limiting me. Like, here's an example of a limiting belief. I'll just use this because everybody's married and divorced, or never been married, or they've been married several times. I'm never going to get married again because statistics show that more than half of marriages get divorced, right? Totally.
Or I haven't ever had a successful relationship, and so it's just not going to happen, and I give up to it, right?
I give up hope, right? So then you accept this limiting belief as true because you've learned it from someone else, or you've had your own experience, but you're staying stuck in it and you're buying into it. And so it's almost as simple as this. Some of these things are so simple, but they are so hard, right? How true is it for you? How true is it for me that I'm never going to get married again? I'm not going to limit myself to anything anymore. I've had so much pain and joy in my life that I'm not limiting myself to anything.
Right. Well, and once you've seen, like you say, once you tap into the tools, you know that it's possible. But like you said, if you don't have access to them, then it's like we human beings, in many ways, we're so easily dissuaded. We're like one little small push down or one little skinned knee, and we totally give up on life. Like, I can't do it. Whether it's relationships or business or whatever.
Right. And so that's why it's so important. People should really look for, to pour into themselves and personal development, because the outcomes and the rewards of this, if you stay around naysayers and dream stealers and negative people, that's what your life, that's what you're going to have too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's more of those out there.
Right. Yeah, because like you said, back to the 85% of the people don't want to do the inner work for whatever reason, right? And in a way, I don't blame them, because like you said, it does suck sometimes, but that's where all the goodness and the gold is,
Right. And that's why I wanted to go over the 4 energy blocks, right? These limiting beliefs, these assumption interpretations, and the gremlin, right? The inner critic, because a lot of times we don't want to do the work because we don't feel like it's going to change anyway, and we're not good enough.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because if people don't see a payoff, or why do I want to go through all this struggle and stuff, and they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel because they can't visually see it, like you said, they're not wearing the right glasses, then they're never going to do the work, are they? I wouldn't do it either.
Right. Right. And guess what? What they're doing isn't working for them,
Right.
but they are willing to just exist in their life and continue for the rest of their life listening to their inner core cry out that they always wanted something different. And that inner core, that voice is saying there is something different for you.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things for me, and I know that for a lot of the world, and or more predominantly in the US, was when the financial crash happened, and the structures, these make-believe structures that have been built up, like you said, go to school, get married, get a job, live your life. And when those crumble, then people have no choice but to dig in, right? And we can all do it. But if life is all hunky-dory, that's why I say, if you live in a cocoon that is really big and really awesome, and maybe you've got all sorts of resources, there's no reason to wake up, right? There's no impetus.
No, right.
But when structures collapse, then it's like, well, I either stay here in the rubble, or I go build a new dream, right?
Right. There's two ways to go, right? Yeah, exactly what you just said. They can say, it's all over, or wow, there's opportunity in this.
Yeah, because some people did stay in the rubble, and they're just going to live their lives there. I don't want to stay in that rubble. For me, it was more of an internal realization, as far as it coincided with the changes in the structural and corporate America and in our society and culture. But it was both internal and external.
Sure. And, just taking just at our lives at any level, you know what I mean? It's like, I looked at mine as like, okay, a bomb went off, and all I've got left is shrapnel sitting around. Yeah. And what am I going to do with it? Yeah. And I was so painful, and I was so depressed, and I was just so hurt, and I felt like my life was ripped off from me, Yeah.
I can imagine. That's like dying before you die, right? Everything you had and loved and were is gone, right? I can only imagine.
Yeah. But but can you imagine this? This is such a great exercise. I love to have my clients do this. I have friends and family do this, is to sit with somebody, your loved one or a friend, knee to knee, and set the timer on your microwave or your phone for 3 minutes. I don't have a microwave, but your phone or your time. Yeah. But most people have them. I don't use them. So anyway, you sit, I know, I had to throw that in there. So I knee to knee, and set a timer for 3 minutes or 2 minutes, and just tell that person, one person talk at a time, take the whole 2 minutes or 3, and just tell them what you're thankful for about them.
Wow.
And what that does is 2 and 3 minutes, it's long. You're down to telling people, I'm thankful for my socks. I'm thankful for you. Right. What are you thankful? But what it does is it shifts energy, and it brings gratitude.
Wow.
And so it's as simple as being, if we start our day every day with gratitude, what we do have, and it could be life and breath. Yeah,
I find I do the simple things too sometimes when I'm having to reach, because that is a practice, Michelle. That is, we all need more work at that, right? Because we're so focused on what's wrong, what's the problem. I can name the problem all day long, but when I say things that are going right, it's like, let me think about this, even though there's just as many, if not more, right? Oh, I like that practice.
And that's a big tool. Yeah. And this is a big tool too. Instead of what's wrong, and this is a big one for me, what's right?
Yeah.
What's right? Like what you're just saying. And just keep asking that, because I do that a lot in my coaching. When people want to stay in that place, tell me what's right.
Yeah. Shifting.
Or, sometimes shifting. And sometimes what helps too, if somebody is so stuck, and they go on, and it's real. I always use the word diminish, because life. Life's painful.
It can be.
Life can be. It can be lonely, painful. Wondering. When you're walking around, why am I here? Why isn't it going the way I want? I mean, those are some really dark days, right? And dark days they're not fun. But I'm here to speak light and tell people they can get out of dark. But.
So you said when your clients are in the really deep, so what do you do?
Yes.
What's the tool?
Oh, yes. Thank you for helping me there. I just lost it. Can you imagine asking somebody, why isn't it worse?
Oh. So you actually push that. Does that almost seems like it would wake them up and go, hey, what are you doing here? You trying to make me more What happens when you do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's always on intuition, and
Mm-hmm.
every client different, right? Sometimes if somebody's so stuck, and
Wow.
I can do it, right? I mean, I can do this
Mm-hmm.
because I've been in these places. I have been in that person, like everything. There is no way out.
Sure. Well,
you
and
know?
that's what makes you a better coach, right? You have that,
Yeah.
you can connect and say, well, boy, I can see where this person is. I know exactly what they need because it's what you needed. I love that.
Yeah. And so sometimes that can be so powerful. Or, I mean, then people that can bring people to gratitude. Let's just start with, wow,
Mm,
I got up and took a shower today if it's that bad. Do you know what I mean? If it's,
yeah,
we're just bringing baby stuff. This is all baby
it
steps,
is.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like that whole saying, how do you eat an elephant?
Mm-hmm.
One bite at a time.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me a long time to even understand that saying. You know what I'm
Yeah. Well,
saying?
one of the things
But
go ahead.
no,
Well,
just
one of
you're
the
fine.
things
Go ahead.
speaking to that point of how to eat an elephant, for me, one of the things that it's almost like you want to be ignorant about one, like we've talked about, how hard it really is, and what's really ahead of you. If you
Hmm.
just take that one step at a time or have blinders on that only show you the first step, then that's easy to kind of like the Alcoholics Anonymous, like just for today, what can I do to
Yeah.
make, because then you break it down bit by bit, it's easy. But if you say, okay, well, let's say
Hmm.
building a business, for example, if you say someone, okay, you're going to spend weekends, evenings, you're going to maybe lose friends, maybe lose family, you're going to have to give up all this. No one would do it. But if you
Yeah.
say, hey, just for today, do this and then this and then this, and then pretty soon you're years down the road and you're well into it. But yeah, we get overwhelmed with thinking, oh, I can't do this for 20 years or whatever, right? Or I can't get out of this funk. But if it's like maybe it's for the second or for the minute, what's the what's the thing you can reach for, right?
Right. It's so true.
Mm-hmm.
These smaller steps have bigger
Yeah.
outcomes. We're told the opposite, right? But it's, we can have this grandiose thing happen to have a grandiose outcome,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and we're sold the false bill of goods, from the movies and books and popular culture that, hey, success happens overnight or success happens within the course of 2 hours. Look at this movie. They were failing, then they did this and they did this and they succeed. And we buy into it because I think we want it to be easy, right? But it's really
Right.
behind the scenes, there's like the 10-year success run, right? 10-year overnight success. But most people don't want to hear that. They don't see that.
Right.
That's not glamorous. That
Well,
doesn't sell movies, right?
right. But then if you tell them what you've been doing the last 10 years,
Hmm.
and they could be successfully monetarily, so let's just say that that's their, but their inner core and who they are, they're not
Yeah.
happy. So that you tell, what if you can choose this life, but there's another way to
Hmm.
live. And I think that's, sometimes I'll tell people, okay, I don't really like to go 10 years out. I like 5 years or just do
Hmm.
1 year, let's do a 1 year goal. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be living in 1 year? What do you want to be making? Who do you want to
Hmm.
be with? What do you want to be contributing, or whatever that is 1 year from now or 5 years from now? Okay, let's be there and let's work it backwards now. How did you get there? Can you tell me?
Hmm. And then you have them develop a plan.
Right, because guess what? Some of that things is just what you said. Well, like I lost some friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
I went through some hard times.
Hmm.
What's the landscape look like? If you really play it out, like what you're saying, people go, because it just doesn't, it, it just doesn't happen overnight, what you're saying. But at
Hmm.
the same time, this whole way of life is so much better. There's work in it, but it's so much better than living your life at mediocrity and not happy and having that inner cry not aligned
Oh,
with
I
your
love it.
exterior. And all you do is have this inner cry of your life.
Yeah, I love that. I look at it as, and I kind of tell this, because we're all on our journey going to where our
Yes.
oasis is, and I kind of tell
Yes.
people that it feels like I've got a machete and I see paradise and I'm going through the jungle. I see paradise over by the beach, but I've got to go through the jungle, and you have to forge the path as you go. There's no
Yes.
path because we're all inventing our own, or all inventing our own lives. And so it's like, hey, if you want to get to the paradise, which we all do, you got to go through this jungle with no path and this machete, right?
Right. Yeah. And these are the things that aren't
No.
told, right? That's why, like, I mean, I become so passionate too, because when I meet people, I tell them what's inside you that you've been just keeping inside you all this time. It's
Mm,
time to get it out, and it's time to live it. And you can live it. We can get aligned with your calling and your purpose. You can finally live that. What would that be worth to you?
wow. Oh, I mean, infinite people. I'm sure people's eyes just awaken.
Yeah. Yeah, it's real. I mean, it's powerful stuff, right? This is, I hear just like what you're saying about forging through with the machete. I love that. I just did this exercise in a class too, kind of the same thing, but different, where they had us, had everybody cross the room, but you had to cross it different. You could not one person do it the same way.
Oh, okay.
So everybody wants to be the first 2 or 3 people because one wants to walk,
take the easy route, right?
Right. Pretty soon, if you're the 25th person, you're like trying to walk across the room on one hand, and you don't really know how to do it. But the point is, everyone did it, and they found a way. And that was the point of having a goal and success and the dream of your life. There's more than one way to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's a great exercise, because that's another challenge I think we have to get over as human beings is, this conformity. We're all put into the hopper, and then we pop out as little conformed beings doing the same thing or mostly the same thing. And we lose our ability to create stuff and have ideas. And it's like, oh, I don't even know how to get across the room in a different way other than one way, right?
Right. But then when people do it, they step out of their fear. They start getting creative. They're out of catabolic energy. They're in anabolic. They're becoming passionate, and they're starting to create. Like we were saying, they're figuring it out. Oh, I can do it. And I mean, how many people are going to work every day? They hate their lives. They hate their job. They're depressed. They're unmotivated. They're becoming lazy. And I say all that because I've been there too.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Right? Yeah. But we can go out and stretch ourselves and start creating what we really want. But it's a limited belief to say I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck and have no money. I know what it's like to have money and no money and go through those seasons of life. And I'm going through them all now. And it's like, but we limit ourselves by saying, I don't have this, I don't have enough money, I can't do that. Those are all false limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
I mean, they're true limiting beliefs, but they're false. They're not. You don't have to live like that. It's false. It keeps you stuck.
Well, and that's why I think what you touched on prior is, examining those beliefs and starting to reprogram them, and just one by one knocking them down, because you're right. That's where it all happens until it seems like there's a period of time when our life maybe still suck, and we're diving into these beliefs, and we're kind of groping in the dark. We have to go a little bit on faith, knowing that it's going to get better, but for a while it's going to get really sucky, because not only does our life suck, but now we're doing this internal work that isn't very fun at all. So we got this double whammy against us. But slowly, for me, when I start to get excited is when I'm doing the inner work and I see things in my experience miraculously come about. Then I write those down. I keep a little journal. I say, because otherwise I have a tendency to go back and say, well, it's not working. But if you have the journal of it is working, and you can go back into concrete evidence, it's because we need those little carrots along the way, or else we just lose hope.
Right. And that's why I loved what you said, the faith, because this is the key right here. Sometimes there's just more power in the faith than the proof.
Yes. But yeah, there is definitely a transitional period, where we have to let go of everything and say, okay, well, if I want my life to get better, I've got to go into this darkness, and I don't know what's going to happen. Right. But that's why I say sometimes if life pushes us enough or gets uncomfortable enough, then we say, well, anything's better than this. Right. And we just go into the darkness.
Yeah. I think it's important that people have foundational principles they live by, and that they have values they live by. A lot of people don't even know what those are, and they don't know what theirs are. So this is what's so fun about life coaching too, and doing programs, right? Because you get to map that out. What do I want to live by? What's important to me? So, sometimes, without a map, you really don't get anywhere, right? You get lost. So these are the things that aren't taught in school either.
No, they're not. Right. These foundation principles. So when it comes to foundation, do you teach your client? What is the concept that you teach your clients? I mean, how do you start that building a foundation with like a clean slate, or how do you approach that with them?
Like I share mine. I ask them first, what are theirs? And, sometimes people will say, well, I don't even think about that. I don't really. Yeah, they're like, what
are you talking? They're like talking a foreign language probably, right?
Right. But what's so fun is you get to them and this is some of the homework that I would give. Wow, why don't you think about those this week? This will be your homework. This is great homework. Why don't you think about some and see what pops up this week when we meet next week? Let's talk about some ways that you really want to start living your life by. They might show up with something like, and start, and I can share mine, because I write mine I keep them with me. They're on 3x5 card. They're all over the place, right? Because I want to live my life, so it becomes who I am.
Yeah.
And values, and understanding what values are and what I live by. And so, and what they want to live by and what their values are, because it's about them and their agenda. But the point is just helping people identify these things that, they're just waking up every day and just being at the effects of life, and they have no vision, they have no plan. And they can have an exciting life, be fulfilled, be successful. And it doesn't have to do with anything that they think that's not attainable for them.
Yeah. Oh, it's so awesome.
That they think. Isn't that powerful?
It's hugely powerful. Yeah. These are the tools that that you share with your clients that people need, even at a young age. One of the things I think about, because it's all like, even like you've touched on at different points, once you have the tool, you still have to get adept at using it and use it on a daily basis. And I think, gosh, if kids had these tools from the day they start preschool or kindergarten, imagine how well they'd be able to use them by the time they reach their 20s and 30s, as opposed to starting when you're 40, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. I was,
Sure.
it just brings out, I'll tell a quick short story. I was meeting actually with a teenager this past week. And this comes from a very accomplished family, very successful, very intelligent people, very competitive, and just this wonderful, they're amazing people. But I was talking to this young man, and he was talking about how he has trouble with sometimes just communicating.
Oh.
And I asked him, I said, because he was talking about everyone's accomplishment, a really smart kid who just speaks all these languages and but see, and this is my point about, it's wonderful to be totally intelligent and have these big goals and all these money, all those things are beautiful. But at the same time, it came down to his core. What he really was saying was he was afraid to be authentic, be his true self, because of all of these pressures of having all of these, accomplishing all of these things.
Yeah.
So what he was saying was he was lacking in intimate relationships. And when I say intimate relationships, I'm just talking about intimate conversation, being transparent, authentic, who I truly, really am, and just could share and talk.
Sure.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I love that story, because it sounds to me like that's a prime story of the blessing is the curse. Like you said, there's a lot of blessings in his life, and the blessings that he has are also this double-edged sword. So I would love to hear what your coaching was in that specific situation, because he has to do like I was talking about. He's got to go through his own jungle with the machete.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that?
Well, I asked him what he wanted in relationships, because he shared about, he wanted relationships that were balanced, because he's a big server, he's a big giver, and that's not reciprocated. But then also he can't be very authentic in his communicating. So for some reason he was feeling he couldn't be. So my question to him was, what do you want a relationship to look like? And as he was explaining that and how he wanted to be, I just used the example that we are only responsible for our side of a relationship. So when he said he wanted friends to show up different, he was saying, I want friends to show up different. I'm always the one maybe, but I can't really get that same back, and because maybe he's always, trying to help out, give a ride or pay for a lunch, or I'm just using examples of things.
He's a giver, like you said.
Right. He's a giver. So then when I said to him, oh, I know you want people to, what I'm hearing you say is you want these more intimate relationships where you can, be authentic and transparent about yourself. Well, let me ask you this. If you want that from other people, are you being that?
Yeah.
And then, he's like, wow, I never thought about it like that. I go, and then I challenged him in like, who's in your inner circle and outer circle. And that's another subject of who you want close, and who you want to share with. But I said, if you show up different, people will show up different.
Yeah, we teach people how to treat us, don't we? Subconsciously even.
Right. Yeah. And if they're not supposed to be in your life, if you keep doing that, they're going to go away, or the other ones will gravitate towards you. They're supposed to.
You've touched on an interesting point in this, because really, when he changes and when we all change, then our experiences are going to change. But we forget we have that power, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, it was so exciting because I met with him a week later, and he used an example. And so I'm not saying names, I can talk about it,
sure.
but he used an example about, like, he has these amazing parents, they're amazing, but he wanted to spend more time with his dad, like doing stuff. And he just assumed, his assumption was that, or his interpretation, that because his dad he didn't spend a lot of time with him because his dad works really hard. He's a great provider. He's, big time job and all these things. And so, so he showed up for his dad and said, hey, he made these plans, these ideas. And his dad said, yeah, let's do it. So he was so excited.
Yeah, he took the reins.
You know what I mean? Because he took the reins. So I said, and that's what I told him. I said, congratulations, you just took the lead of your life and you're creating what you want with your dad.
Wow, what a breakthrough.
And your dad's meeting you in it.
Yeah.
What a breakthrough, right?
And that belief that he had, that limiting belief, is totally dissolved now.
Yes, because he was like, wow, I just never looked at it from this perspective. Like, so now, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't mean my dad loves me any less just because he did. We even talked about, well, maybe your dad's doing his best and he's not even aware of it also. You can be the one showing that part.
Right, totally. Oh my gosh. I love that.
Isn't that cool? Because our parents don't teach us everything. We got to teach them some things.
Right. And the awareness, one person can bring the awareness where at one point in time, and maybe his dad brings the awareness a different, so it's like this give and take, isn't it? We all are a player. We all have the ability.
Right. And see how closed we can be. We can just be stuck and go, oh God, they never do that. Well, gosh, I don't either.
Right. We take the seed and say, well, expect them to make the advance. I forget the Darren Hardy, the publisher of Success. He has that little book called 100%, 0%.
Yes.
Have you heard of this? Like how much responsibility are the relationships in your life? And everyone's like, well, 50-50, or someone goes out on the edge and goes 51-49, right? Then he's like, well, no, they're 100%. You're 100% in charge.
Yes.
And everyone's kind of blown away going, what? That's too much. That's too much. But he's like, hey, if you want it to work like your client does, you got to take 100% of the responsibility.
Yes. And
so
yeah,
powerful.
It's huge, because what the gift in that is that you're responsible for doing that 100%. And however the other person shows up, it doesn't have anything to do if they show or they don't. Knowing that part isn't. But when we show up, like he's saying, 100%, wow, look what happens. I mean, now I've got this 17-year-old who's going, whoa, okay, my dad and I are getting a whole nother component to our relationship.
And that's a tool that he'll, then it becomes a stepping stone or a block in his foundation that's just going to make him have much more better experience in life throughout his whole life.
Yeah, and that's right. He's doing it with his friends. He's figuring out which friends are good for him and which ones aren't, and how he wants to have the relationships, and he's showing up different. And that's what a great tool. And you're right, so young to have it. I mean, I wish I would have had this stuff when I was 18.
Well, yeah, don't we all, right? Don't we all?
Right. But, another thing I just wanted to touch on really quick was, and I don't know if I touched on it last time, but another thing too about who we are in our operating systems. Some of us are more emotional, some of us are more logical, some of us are just run by our intuition. And, and then we just kind of stay in that because that's something else we're taught, and that's kind of part of our makeup, who we are. But when we learn holographic thinking, and we learn that our brain, we can train our brain to use, we can use our whole brain. So I always was a very highly emotional person. And now I've really learned to stretch my logic and my intuition. So I'm more highly intuitive now. And I use a lot more logic than I did in my early years. And it's something else that wasn't taught, right? We have these traits that we just stay with.
Right.
And
you do what works, right?
Yeah, you do what works. But we're missing out on a whole other area of life, like of how we live our life. So I love teaching this and challenging people. There's no right or wrong, but showing, having more emotion is not right or wrong, or having more logic isn't right or wrong, but showing people, how do you take intuition, logic, and emotion and balance them and use them in your life and be whole brain thinking when you make decisions.
Wow. That is a huge, that's really powerful. The one thing that I always think about when we start to, like you said, when you start to give the people teach them more intuition coaching and stuff like that, is it seems like once, because I think we're all like intuitive on various levels and sometimes very deeply, right? And I've seen this, I've read about this, and I've seen this in different people where they're really intuitive and they have this deep well of like touching the human experience, but it has overwhelmed them, or they haven't, because if you're given an amazing tool, an amazing gift, you don't know how to use it, you're never going to touch it because it's going to be scary, it's going to be detrimental, and it could potentially harm you too, right? I mean, I've heard that intuitive people, they're taking all the emotions in, they're very empathic, and they could eventually be like, life sucks really bad because they haven't been taught how to use their gift. So I think that's great that you're starting people to learn, teaching people how to use that gift, because that's the best gift in the universe, in my opinion. But
yeah, that's right. And so it's like, and how do we balance it with our, that's what's so key, right? Because I'll use me as an example, when I was just highly emotional.
Sure.
I mean, it's wonderful to be emotional. I mean, I'm that lively. I feel everything, right? And but emotions. If I just run on emotions, I'm too emotional, and I can make irrational decisions. I made a lot of poor choices just off emotions. But when I learned, wow, my logic was so little, but I started to expand on my logic and really started checking my gut, my intuition, right? You start, then you're just making solider decisions. It's, you can buy, just like talking about buying a house.
Right.
Oh, it's great. Let's buy it. And then a logical person, let's see, we'll write all this down. Right. And what does our intuition say? But just making it that basic. But when you use your whole brain, the outcomes change. The outcomes change.
Yeah. You get a better outcome, don't you?
You get a better outcome because, and these are things that are not taught either. We just go, oh, this is what I'm given. It's what I have. And we don't challenge ourselves.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this notion of we just leave intuition on the back burner. We put it in the closet and just don't even address it, even though it's where all the good high level wisdom is.
Yes.
Instead, we're just teaching people, like you said, either to be emotional decision makers or intellectual decision makers, both of which are totally lacking, right? The core component.
Right. So how do we put whole brain thinking together in a holograph thing? So it's another thing I'd love to challenge people, and it just gets people thinking, and then, wow. And then they make, when you start having awareness in these aha moments, and then you show up different and you start using these tools, like you're saying, the outcomes are better, life is getting better, and you're living more anabolic. You have so much, you're getting more, you're getting out of the catabolic living. You're becoming more and more anabolic in everything that you do. And that's where your joy, through the even hard circumstance, that's the peace in the circumstance. That's the constant joy that we can have, where in our ups and downs, we can stay consistent. And less catabolic energy is less distracting.
Yeah, when they start purging that out of their physiology, I take it.
Yeah, because if you don't use all your giftings too, right, it can become catabolic. If I'm just highly emotional making decisions, it could turn into fear. Sure.
Well, and like you said, you're not accessing that high level aspect of yourself. You're just, which emotions are valuable, like you said, but it's not that higher wisdom.
Right. That's right. So those are the things, these are just tools that are they're life-changing tools that they're just not taught. And this is, my heart is so passionate for, there's people out there, they're in marriages, they're unhappy. They could have great marriages and they don't know it. I even though I'm divorced, I'm an advocate for marriage. I believe in marriage. I think any marriage can endure anything, and you can have a wonderful, joyous marriage. But people don't have the tools to know how to even show up in their marriage, and there's too much blame going on. And I'm committed. I want to help people. I've helped marriages get better. They come through a coaching program. Guess what? Marriages get better. Working relationships get better. Without these tools, we stay in that, I know I use the word mediocrity, but there's just that kind of catabolic. it's just,
we say that, well, it's the lower consciousness realm, right? We're just like, it's easier to scrap it. And, we're like a throwaway society, and I'm just as guilty of this as the next person. Historically, when something got difficult, whether it's a relationship or whatever, just scrap it. Don't, because back to that comfortaholic business. Well, if I'm a comfortaholic, I don't need to go into the pain of looking inside or whatever. I'm just going to scrap it and get a new one, right?
Right. And guess what? I'm just going to keep surviving when I really want to be thriving.
Yeah, right. Because the next relationship's going to be the same,
Right.
back because I never did the changing. So it's like, okay, but yeah, so many people go through that, and it's like scrap it, scrap it, scrap it, and then eventually you realize, well, I got to face the music here, and I might as well do the work, or it's not going to get better.
Right. And if you don't do the work, like you're saying, it shows up. That's that operating system, right? If I have unforgiveness and I was really harmed as a child, or
Hmm.
I was hurt by somebody, and if I don't do the work, that's showing up everywhere in my life, wherever I go and what I do.
Yeah.
That's that distractive catabolic energy that will keep me in that snare, right? It'll keep me not in my fullest
Hmm.
potential. And that's why I want to speak to everyone out there. If you are surviving, and not thriving, and you are hiding because you were abused as a child, or your life wasn't the way you thought, or somebody left you, or a church hurt you, or a relationship hurt you, or a job
Hmm.
hurt you, you need to find a coach. You
Hmm.
need to find
Yeah.
someone so that you can learn how, and hopefully it will be me, but there are many wonderful coaches. But my heart goes out because I was one of those people and I kept hiding. I
Hmm.
don't hide anymore. I don't have to hide anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of times, I'm glad you said that message, because some people they don't know it can get better. If you're like living in the negativity in the storm, and just once you accept it, you're like, okay, well, this is going to be my life for the next whatever years.
Hmm.
And it just, because they just take the pain, take the pain, take the pain, and it just never gets
Yeah.
better.
Right. And then they medicate it, right? We
Sure.
medicate it.
Hmm.
You hide whatever you need. I'm depressed. I go to the doctor all the time. Whatever people do, they do. They say they're depressed, all these different things. And I just know for me that, like, years ago when I was, in counseling, and I work with a lot of therapists too, and they're
Hmm.
fantastic. I have just found that the best thing that worked for me is, first, obviously I have my strong faith, but these coaching tools changed me so much because they taught me that everything I've been through, everything I'm going to go through, everything I haven't even experienced yet, and what I've already
Hmm.
have, good, bad, or indifferent, doesn't have to define me to hold me back for what my purpose and passion is.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you're in charge.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that just so amazing?
It is. It's a total shift. And one of the other things I like to think about based on what you said is that whatever happens to us, whatever goes on or our experiences, there's this core being of ourselves that is never affected by that. And if we stay in tune with that, then we can manage all that other stuff. But it's like some people just, they internalize those things, and they like totally collapses them. And it's happened to me. And, you just collapse and you're like, okay, well, I'm done, right? Tap out.
Yeah.
But it's really,
Right. Yeah.
it's not the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Giving that hope.
It's so true. Yeah. And when you lose hope, because guess what? All this stuff, they're taking
Yeah.
it to their jobs, right? And then they're going to work and they hate their jobs. And you know what they really
Yeah.
hate? They hate
Yeah.
themselves.
And they can't get away from themselves.
And there's toxic work environments. They can't get away from themselves. And there's toxic work environments. And guess what? With these tools and transformation, you can walk in a toxic work
Oh,
environment and know how to be detached involved.
I love
Powerful,
that. Yeah.
powerful
Yeah.
stuff, because
Because you
I hear
got
it all
your
day
all
long.
your tools, yeah, and your armor on, and it's like it doesn't affect you, right?
Right. And guess what? I mean,
Mhm.
if you, I hear this all day long. You know how many people are in jobs with toxic work environments? Now they're either going to create something in their life, change and get out, or they've got the tools to learn how to endure and realize that there are toxic people they work for, but they're realizing, taking responsibility of their own toxicity in the place, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and it's back to what you said with your younger teenage client. Once you realize that you have 100% of the responsibility for the toxicity, which can be a big idea to internalize, then
Mhm.
then you have the power to change it. Like you said, either by leaving or by just showing up differently, and everything else just changes in your experience.
Right. And it doesn't mean too, like, I really want to be clear about, there are just some people, that
Hmm.
aren't healthy for us, and we need healthy boundaries. Boundaries
Right.
are key, and there are situations. And I have those people in my life too. I would love to, there's even some people in my life, I would love to have reconciliation,
Hmm.
but they have to want it too.
Yeah.
They have to want to come to the table. I can't make anybody that I've hurt or they've hurt me come to a
Hmm.
table. I'm willing. But so then guess what? If they're not, you've got to have healthy boundaries.
Right. I love that you said that, because there is there is that delineating point of, hey, we have total control, but if someone else doesn't want it, or if there's a situation that's really dangerous for us, then we have to be aware and say, don't be crazy, or don't go into a deliberately bad situation. Yeah, there is a line, isn't there? Like you said, if they don't want it, there's nothing you can do to get them to do it.
Yeah, and there's no reason to be anybody's doormat.
Correct.
No, there's just no reason. And so there's those boundaries too, And that's what's so exciting too about this is you get all these tools, and when you become, you shift your energy from surviving to thriving, and you start getting your purpose, and you move with, that passion and determination, and you move, where you're going.
Yeah.
And you get that, like we were talking about earlier, people are going to come against you. You're going to lose a lot of people when they go, wow, that person is determined, purposeful. Right. They know where they're going.
Yeah. I'm going to try to take them out, right?
Yeah. I'm going to try to take them out, right? I got to find some stories. I got to make up some stuff. The gossip starts to fly. But this is when you take your power back and start, I love your machete, just start making trailblazing.
Yeah. You got to keep, like you said, you sometimes I think, okay, well, I'm going to sit down and take a little rest here on this stump of my pack and have a little drink of water. But then ultimately you can't stay there too long because you're just wasting time, right?
Yeah, that's right. And
it's so awesome.
It is so good because we can we can give ourselves permission, but it's time to get back up, right? It's just time to get back up, and there's painful stuff out there, but there's so much more joy, and people's lives can change. That's why I just put a big smile on my face just when I'm talking, because this is just.
Well, because you've seen it, because you see, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, is because there is the joy, there is so much more waiting for us. I mean, but we need to catch a glimpse of it, or be able to take a sip of it before we realize it. And it is that's what I'm really passionate about that too, is how do we get people or ourselves out of that gray area? And you've given us so many tools and the dark times, because I do believe a lot of people are in those times. I mean, we're all coming out of it in our own way, but that's where, to get people back to that functional level, back to at least tasting the hope and tasting the joy, because that's where it's really crappy in the dark times. And all these tools I can see being very highly beneficial for them to put in their tool bags.
Yeah, it's so big because, I give this assessment. Did I talk about that? The assessment that I give during my coaching program? Tell us a little more about it
for refresh our memory.
This assessment that I give first when people come in, if they go through my program, it's an attitude assessment. It's not a, all the great personality tests we've all taken, Myers-Briggs and all of those out there. This is an attitude assessment. So when I give it to them, I send it and tell them, only take this if you're going to be 100% honest, and take it in the now, not in your past, not in your future. I want you to answer these questions completely right now in your life. And it's an amazing attitude assessment because guess what? It prints out and it's like, okay, we get to see in black and white to help people if they are not even sure where to even start, But right here, it shows me about where they show up in their life, catabolic energy, and it shows the anabolic energy. And then they see it in black and white. And I've had people go, wow, this is such a great tool. This is so amazing. And I've had some people, get really defensive on it, at first and go, because now they're like, it's even on paper.
You've put a mirror up to them, haven't you?
I put a mirror to them,
no.
and they all look gremlins.
Does it scale when you say attitude? Are we talking say positive optimistic to pessimistic negative? Is that what the scale is, or how does it rate?
The scale rates on this anabolic and catabolic energy. So it's the same thing, but it's showing. Remember when I was talking about you're sticking your fingers in your side? It's going to show me, wow, when you're just living your normal life during the day, you show up 30% of it's catabolic. When you're under stress, 75 is catabolic. We got to shift some stuff here.
Wow. And you get that all from, is it a questionnaire that they answer? And you derive this, wow.
Yeah, and it's amazing because guess what happens? Then they get to see it, we get to see it, we work on it, and after 3 months, it's like, where are we now? I go back to that same assessment and I'll ask questions they have shifted. They can't even answer that same question. They answer it completely different.
Wow. I've never heard of that tool before, but it sounds so foundational and like a different, like a deep underlying way to look at your life.
Yes, it is. It's great. And people love to look, and they love to see, a lot of people like to see things black and white. At first, like I said, some people don't because it's like reveals.
Sure, right. Scary.
That
They
can't
close
be
the
right,
book, right?
Like, that can't
Take
be
it
right.
back.
But then, then that's where your tears of joy start happening, right? And people get the
Right.
breakthroughs. So,
Well, and it gives us that. It sounds like it gives them a data baseline, because that the hardcore data doesn't lie, right?
data doesn't lie. And it's amazing because this is for all walks of life. Like we've talked about some really heavy, painful brokenness. And
Mhm.
then there's people too that maybe they don't have all of that, right? Life is actually going good. They're at the heights of their career and their marriage is good. And there's a lot of great things, but then they're like, I'm not really quite living what I
Mhm.
want. That's again, back to that core. See, I work with all kinds of where people are at, but it always goes back to the core of who they are. And they're learning that, wow, if I'm showing up there, I'm showing up everywhere. And people don't realize that either the same way.
Yeah. Everyone that's good that you say that. We all have more to connect with our core and more to do and more joy to have no matter where we're at, don't we?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. What's so great about coaching, and this is someone else's quote, but I'm going to take it. You get a large amount of change in a short amount of time.
Because it's intense, sounds like.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, you do. Even though it's baby steps and it doesn't happen overnight, but you do, because these kind of shifts, they're just,
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it in that context. Like, because once you shift, sometimes if you shift something small, the leverage that you get in the material world is huge, right? I mean, a baby belief is going to create a catastrophic, and that's what I think. When I've seen those things in my own life and in the lives of other people, it almost blows you over, going, "Wow, you're telling me the small energetic or conscious shift over here is going to cause this big, yeah." Yeah, so people think, since I think they think, well, again, speaking from my own perspective, is like when we live in the physical world, we know that we have to push X hard to get X result. But when you're working in the spiritual consciousness world, you don't have to push that hard to get that result. You push a little and you can get a huge, but we don't transfer. It's hard to transfer that concept into that, because we're just not taught that.
Right. It's so true. And believing this can happen, you can get the breakthroughs because it's just so real. Developing yourself. Most people won't do it.
No. It just seems too insurmountable. And like I said, I've been there. I can totally relate to that. But once you reach the end of the road, like I did, and like some people do, it's like, well, there's no choice but to turn back and start going back the other direction because you've reached the end. There's nothing more. So that's when I think,
right.
Sometimes it's necessary. Oh,
Yeah.
Awesome, Michelle, so awesome. Go ahead.
I was just going to say to everyone, to you, me, and all the listeners, your life is worth finding. Your life is worth finding. What is your foundation built on?
I love that. Yeah, such good tools you shared with us. This is the creme de la creme. I mean, I'm going to listen to this a couple times at least. Michelle, thank you so much for coming back, and this is awesome. This deeper dive into these tools, they're hugely beneficial.
I'm so glad. Thanks so much for having me, Mark. This is, life. We can all be thriving, and we can all learn to do hard things well and be successful, fulfilled, and have joy.
Such a great, that's great to close on. That's great. All right, Michelle, thank you so much. And we'll have you, hopefully, will you come back and join us again down the road?
Anytime, I would love to. It's an absolute pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure to be on your podcast, and you're amazing, the gifts that you're sharing and what you're doing for the world.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right. Well, we'll close off there. Thank you, Michelle.
Okay. All right, Mark. Talk to you soon.
So what'd you think? Did you get some awesome tools that you can put in your bag of tricks, in your personal development routine, maybe your morning or your evening rituals, to take your life to the next level, to design your life in your way? I know that I certainly did. And one of the things I want to challenge you to as we wrap up the podcast is I want to challenge you to do something that I challenge myself to quite frequently. And that is to extract some of these tools and actually put them into practice. Because if you're anything like me, sometimes I get so focused on the knowledge and the information that I forget to put it into practice. And what do we know, right? Nothing changes in life unless we actually do the work. We can know how to do it. We can know everything about it. We can even know why we should do it. Michelle talked about that in this podcast and the prior podcast, right? We don't need more why. We don't need more knowledge. There's actually a quote out there. I can't remember at the moment, but it's something to that effect, right? It's not more knowledge we need. It's more application we need. And so one of the things that I try to challenge myself to do quite frequently is actually do the work. And I'm talking about the internal work. In a very real sense, it's just as difficult to get ourselves out of the inertia that we've developed in the personal development game, where we're talking about developing consciousness and developing state of being and setting that positive mindset, tuning into the person we want to be, the things we want to do and have. It's just as difficult to do that as it is to get up and go to the gym. It's just a different type of resistance that we're facing, isn't it? One's internal resistance. Well, they're both kind of internal resistance, but the other one is actually traveling to the gym, lifting the weights, doing the exercises. It's just as difficult to do both of that type of work. And that's one thing I want to challenge you to do. And I'm also challenging myself to do is actually do the work, put the tools into practice, pick up the tool and use it. And one of the ways to do that is to extract some of these tools that she shared with us and put them into your morning routine or your evening routine. Some of the tools that I'm going to be using in my routine and that I've been using since my prior interview with Michelle is the question, how do I want to show up today? What is my intention for the day? Who do I want to be today? And then holding that in my consciousness for just a few minutes in the morning, actually feeling that way, visualizing myself being that way, and then starting my day. Because it actually focuses our consciousness, doesn't it? And it helps us show up that way. So that's one of the tools that I'm going to be putting into my personal development routine. I actually have been doing that for a few weeks. It's making a big difference in my life. So that's one of the things I want to challenge you to do. This episode was loaded with different tools, a bunch of tools. So I know you're going to find something that resonate with you. Obviously, we can't use every tool that we realize, that we come to know or that people talk about. We have to choose the tools that resonate with us, don't we? And another thing that I want to say about that is that just like going to the gym, you don't want to do the same workout every day, right? The muscles will reach they'll reach the point of, Arnold Schwarzenegger talked about this, they'll learn what's coming, and then so they won't grow. And bodybuilders talk about it like shocking the muscle, or there's a term that I can't think of it right now, but it's like muscular confusion, right? Confusing the muscles so they don't know what's coming and they can't adapt to those exercises. We can adapt that ideology into personal development, can't we? Because doing the same things in our routine all the time, we'll get a little bit stale, we'll get a little bit bored with that, and we may fall off the path and not do them as much. But if you have a number of tools in your arsenal that you can pick and choose depending on the day, how you feel, what your kind of intuition is telling you, right? What do you want to do today? Sometimes, if we use the gym analogy, we don't need to go to the gym and lift a weight every single day. We can go for a run or go for a walk or run stairs or do something different like that. Well, if we're talking about personal development, we can look at our tools and say, you know what, this one's resonating with me today, or this one's resonating with me today. And we do that and implement that tool in our lives in that way. So that's one way to look at it. But obviously a lot of tools here to share that she shared with us, so you can choose as many as you like and put them into your bag of tricks and use them as you see fit. So before we close, I want to thank Michelle one more time again. If you're looking for life coaching, or if you want to contact Michelle to see what she can offer you in your life to help you get more success, to help you show up in the way that you want to show up, remember, Michelle is certified in 3 different types of coaching. She has deep insight into the human experience, not only from her own life experiences, things she's done in the past and her own life, but also into the 3 different types of training, the IPEC, the Ziegler Legacy, and also the John C. Maxwell certification. So you can contact Michelle by visiting her website, unlockyourdestiny.com. You can read all about her coaching, what she offers. You can also contact her via phone. Her phone number's on that website. So again, that is unlockyourdestiny.com. All right, we'll wrap up the podcast there. I really appreciate you listening. And until next time, all the best, health, wealth, and success. Bye-bye.